So I say Encircle, we have a few different locations just in Utah right now. But basically our locations act as community centers for the LGBTQ plus population. We focus a lot of our like services towards youth and young adults, so ages 12 to 25. But we also end up bringing in like families with that and parents and just like community members of all ages. We offer things like therapy. We have drop-in hours for kids after school where you can just like come have a safe place. We have support groups and things like that. So just like a space to support the community, especially because we're in like a heavily religious area. So it's not super common like outside in the general public. So that's the main thing we do. And for volunteers, we have our volunteers, most of the time what they're doing is just helping out during our drop-in hours. So just helping like supervise the youth, make connections with them, help them feel safe and welcome. And then we also have some like higher up volunteer positions where people like facilitate support groups or like host different programs and activities and stuff like that.
How long have you been with Encircle?
Next month it'll be my second year anniversary, which since we're like a newer organization, it started in like 2017. That's considered a long time for our organization, especially like we hire a lot of like college students and stuff. So
oh yeah.
But yeah, about 2 years.
Okay. And you guys were using, and correct me if I'm wrong, you weren't using a program, but it was kind of being all like done in spreadsheets and
yeah, I would say like half of the stuff we do in Rosterfy now was just like in spreadsheets before, and then we used a platform called Bamboo that was
oh yeah, I remember Bamboo HR.
Yeah, it's just like an HR platform.
Yeah, which not necessarily always works for volunteer organizations.
Yeah.
For sure. For you and your experience, what has been your biggest challenge with the volunteer program side of things?
I would say like in general, as far as like platforms go, like the things that we were looking for when we switched platforms is just like having a way to manage our volunteers in general, because like you said, like the platform we were using before just didn't really work for volunteers, and we had like all these different things we were managing in like a million different ways. So just having like a space to manage our volunteers and keep track of things like, you know, their background checks, or like if they've signed a contract for us and if they've completed training, like having all of that organized. And then I think the other thing is just like being able to communicate with volunteers in like a mass communication type of way, if that makes sense.
In one click versus, you know, emailing.
Yeah.
Yes. And then how do you believe we have helped with that, or Rosterfy as a platform has helped with that, other than the, you know, I know you mentioned some like communications, tracking the journey, knowing where people are at, background checks, things like that. Any other like ways that we have helped with challenges, maybe that you didn't even know were a challenge beforehand?
Yeah, I feel like being able to have people in checkpoints has just made our onboarding process like so much smoother. That was something like onboarding was so hard to manage before, and now like it's just built in. So like just also having like a linear like timeline also, that both like admin and like the volunteers themselves can see, like, okay, they know what their next step is when they log into Rosterfy. Like that's been super awesome, just made things like way smoother. And then yeah, like what I said before, being able to like just being able to attach just a document to somebody's profile, or like have all of their information in one place, and just being able to like customize so many of our features, and yeah, like just change and adjust things as we need it has been super awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits for sure is the customizable and making it like it looks like your platform. It doesn't look like Rosterfy's platform. It looks like your platform. So, and then are you guys currently, I know it's kind of hard to say, especially like being kind of new. I mean, I say new, 6 years is a long time, 7 years almost. Are you guys, how are you as in your position measuring that impact that Rosterfy has done, if anything, or any input on that?
No, yeah, for right now, I think the main thing is we're kind of just like paying attention and estimating and like just kind of figuring out the average time frame that it takes for a volunteer to get onboarded. So like from the day they register or fill out an application to the first time they're volunteering, like that's something we always try to keep at a minimum, or like just make that the shortest amount of time as possible. And obviously there's like different factors that go into that. Sometimes it's the volunteers problem, right? Like they just are like, I don't want to do it, and then we lose them. But in general, like I would say that's been a big thing. Just kind of paying attention to that. And then also just like kind of comparing like what we've been able to do with Rosterfy versus our old management platform, like having our training take place within the platform versus like it was external before. They had to like click on a link that would take them somewhere else, or like being able to do our scheduling within the platform. All of those things I think have made a big difference. Like I guess that was like what also drew us to Rosterfy.
I have to ask a question that has to pertain to me, so don't worry about hurting my feelings. But how would you describe Rosterfy's onboarding process, especially in organization for volunteer management? Do you feel successful? Do you feel and you don't worry, this isn't going to be like, hey, Jessica hates Carrie.
You did horrible.
Post to the group chat. But yeah, how do you feel that onboarding process did for you? Did you feel like it was, I like to say we're not very cookie cutter. Like it's not like, hey, this is what you get, you don't throw a fit type deal. Like I at least try to make it personalized towards your organization and your organization's needs.
No. I think it's a good question. I'll tell you, like, I thought about this before. I'll tell you the pros and cons.
Okay.
I would say I definitely appreciate like how thorough the onboarding was, because Rosterfy is like kind of a beast to learn. But like you said, you kind of like customize it to what we want. You figured out like what our goals are, what we want our process to be. And then, so I didn't really like mind that it kind of took a while to learn, because I feel like that's just like the price you pay for having like so much that you can do and so many like customizable options. So I think the onboarding like needed to be as intensive as it was, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's kind of like, what's that called? A double-edged sword blade.
Yeah.
Like there's the good is the bad, because and this also like is because of the situation we were in. We were just like, we're canceling Bamboo right now, so we're in the position where we like didn't have a volunteer management platform. So until like Rosterfy was set up, we just were like on pause with our volunteers. So I think that was the hardest thing, is just like it took longer than expected. But now that I know what I know, I'm like, I think that was still necessary.
Yeah, for sure. No, we get that feedback a lot. It's any software implementation that takes a bit, and especially one that's gonna like take time out of your job and create like, hey, I want you to set this up for your success. That's the hard thing. So thank you for that feedback. I love feedback, and good, bad, ugly, pretty, gorgeous. I like anything. So like I said, I feel like it now that I'm where I am, I'm like, I think that was necessary. I don't know if I could have learned it any other way. Especially like I appreciated having like homework kind of to do every time. Like, okay, now you're gonna set this up on your own, and then like figuring out and then coming back and reviewing that. I feel like that was helpful. Awesome. I'm a big advocate on homework, but for sure the It's so weird when you like talk to a client almost like every day in onboarding or like once a week. And then when they're done, it's like, you actually came up on our program that we use to manage onboarding. And it was like, you haven't talked to this person in a month. And I was like, what? I was like, oh my gosh. So
For a while there, I was like having more meetings with you than I was like my actual coworker. Yeah, I think our long-term goals for like the volunteer program specifically are just similar to like overall our organization goals, which is just to be able to grow. We have plans, like we've just opened a new location and we have 2 more in the works that are hopefully going to open next year. So I think like what that means for the volunteer program is just like continuing to improve our processes and like making things more efficient, to ensure that like what we're doing now, we're like, okay, this works for us, but is it going to work when we have 5 homes open? Is it going to work when we have 8 homes open? You know, just making sure that everything is like adaptable and like there's longevity in it, I guess. Which right now I don't feel like there's anything like super different that Rosterfy would have to do. It'd probably just be like small changes we would be making.
do you have any metrics that you have notably or that you could see since you started Rosterfy, good or bad?
Yeah, I asked and we don't have anything specific, like any specific numbers for a couple of reasons. One is that we have a data team, but they started about the same time we like got started with Rosterfy. And so yeah, they're like pretty new, and we also just didn't have a great way to track things before. But I thought I would mention that, like, kind of along with other things, even though we don't have specific numbers to like compare, I think a big thing is like now we can actually start gathering data. So like now reports is huge for us. Like we have a report on the percentage of shifts that are filled using like our data from Rosterfy, like something that we just could not even track that before without doing a ton of extra unnecessary work. And same thing with like tracking like our head count, like how many volunteers we have at each location and like things like that. And how many like volunteer hours we have. So those are big things. I should have asked, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we do track like our volunteer hours and we like equate that to like financially what that's worth based on like, you can look up like the average like volunteer
salary
amount. Yeah. So I can find that later and send it to you, but I know that we do track that. And so yeah, but in general, like, I mean, it's just nice that we have stuff.
You can track it. You can yeah. For you, what advice would you give someone who is thinking about volunteering in general or even with your organization? Or, you know, we're seeing some interesting statistics come across with volunteering where, you know, we've got some generations like super into it, other generations not, and then this new younger generation that's really getting involved and invested. So what advice would you give to anyone, whatever generation, who's interested in either volunteering as together?
Yeah. I would say if for somebody that's just like, I want to get involved in my community, I want to volunteer just in general, I would say like the first thing is it's a good idea to think about like what you're looking for with the opportunity and like what you can offer, and then like what you're available for. Like, do you just want like a one-time event where you help out on the day of? Do you want something that's long term and consistent? Could you do something that's on a schedule, or do you need more flexibility? I think that's a big part of it. And then just like figuring out what you're interested in. Like, do you want to like work with animals? Do you want to work with people, specific groups of people? Do you like want to do something that you could do at home? Would you want to have a lot of interaction with others, be more on your own? I think figuring all of those things out and then kind of like narrowing your search so that you don't end up in a spot and be like, oh, this isn't what I expected. And then you can't commit, or you just like, it doesn't work out. I feel like that's a big thing. Another thing, I feel like this sounds like kind of backhanded, but it's not what I mean. But I would say something I like never probably would have thought about until I was in the role that I was in. A lot of the times we get these like big groups or people who are like, "Hey, I'm a yoga instructor. Can I come teach yoga?" And it's like so kind and sweet to offer that. Or these big groups are like, "We want to come help. What can we do?" It's amazing. I love the enthusiasm, but sometimes what ends up happening is we have to like cater to what they want to do. So I'm like, nobody really, it turns out nobody has any interest in learning yoga, but like now we have to invite you over and everybody has to go to this yoga class, and the youth are like, I don't want to do this. And you're like, too bad, this person's volunteering. We have to be nice to them. As lovely as it is, like to offer what you have, like if you have special skills, I think that's something great to mention, but a better thing to do is say like, I am ready and willing to do whatever. What's your biggest need? Like, what is the biggest thing you need right now? Like, is it possibly something I could help out with? And then while you're there, you can mention like, by the way, if you ever are looking for this service, like you can toss that in.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. That's I had soapbox moment, but anyway.
No, that's great. That's great feedback, because you know, you could go in there with the best intentions, but you know, it might just not be the right time, not be the right crowd, and you know, you don't want to cater. You need to remember who you're actually catering for, not the people coming in. So that's definitely, you know, come in with the best intentions, but also like don't come in so like that.
And then I guess if people just wanted to volunteer, like specifically at Encircle, I would say just like learn more about Encircle, make sure it's the right like fit for you, and then talk to me. Call me up.